Hello students, we've got a great video for you today. Welcome to Mr. Martirone and Mr. Walter's flipped lesson, Absolutism in England.
Alrighty, class, for those of you that are unaware, England, the United Kingdom, Great Britain is that nice little purple country right up there to the north of France. So just so you have a little bit of orientation where we're going to be talking about today. Alright, Absolutism in England, the triumph of Parliament. Alright, we're going to be starting by telling you the story of England in the 1600s. Alright, during the Renaissance, we talked to you that England was a hotbed of religious conflicts between the Protestants and the Catholics. Alright, the kings and queens there believed in divine right, but they also understood the value of a good relationship with Parliament. Now, some of you guys may be asking, well, what is Parliament? Parliament is a form of government similar to the Congress that we have in the United States. It's a legislative body. All right. The first character we're going to be talking about is a guy by the name of Henry. Henry always needed money, and he was spending an excessive amount of money, and Parliament would not give him money. All right. Unfortunately, Henry dies, and his daughter Elizabeth I takes over. She becomes what's known as the last Tudor. Okay, she also dies, and she also doesn't have an heir to the throne. So now the crown goes to the cousins, called the Stuarts, and they're not popular with Parliament, and inevitably this leads to a clash within Parliament.
So in England, the kings will see how absolutism is working out in Spain and how absolutism is working out in France, and England is going to also want to be an absolute government. But the problem is, if you remember, England had the Magna Carta, which has already severely limited the power of the king, and so Parliament has a lot more control in England than they do in places like France and Spain. So we get to the first Stuart king. His name is King James I, and he is classified as not really a great boss. He is going to fight with Parliament often, and he's going to fight with dissenters, and these are Protestants who were against his Church of England. And we had talked about this before in class, but the Puritans are the ones in England that are going to be leaving England and coming to the Americas to set up what will eventually be New England.
When he dies, the next king takes over, Charles I. Charles I, I like to call him Headless Charlie, and you'll find out why. He also really wasn't a great leader, wasn't a great boss. He tried to be an absolute monarch. And what he did was he imprisoned his enemies, his foes. He tried to tax people without consulting Parliament, and we all know how well that goes over. And in 1628, Parliament refused to raise taxes without their consent. So Charlie said, I don't need you, and he what's called dissolved Parliament. He got rid of it. Okay? The lesson there was don't mess with the English Parliament.
And here's why, because the Parliament will fight back. And they are going to get together in 1640, and they are going to almost be permanent for 13 years. They will refuse to disband. And during this time, they are going to put people on trial and execute them for some of the things that the king had forced people to do, like raising taxes without their consent. They'll say, well, who was it that raised the taxes? And then they'll execute those people. And this is going to anger Charles. And so Charles, in an attempt to fight back, is going to try to arrest Parliament, except that all the people of Parliament escape. And what will happen is there will now be an all-out civil war. We will see Parliament supporters and Charles the King supporters fighting over who can have control of England.
All right, there we're divided into two teams. Okay, team number one, Charles I, and the team for Parliament. Okay, the supporters of Charles were called the Cavaliers. All right, the supporters of Parliament were called the Roundheads. Okay,
essentially, after this long civil war, Charles I side doesn't win, and Parliament side does win. And so what's going to happen is they will capture Charles I and try him and execute the king. And that is why Mr. Martirone likes to call Charles I Headless Charles. Now, and this is their way of saying, look who really is the boss. Look who really is in charge. Now, there is no king. you have a parliament, and who is going to be in charge of the country, we will find out in part 2 and the exciting conclusion of absolutism in England.
Now, as we're going through this, think about it, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the conflicts between a leader and parliament. The President of the United States disagrees with Congress. The President just can't dissolve Congress and ignore their authority. We would have a civil war in this country, and that's what happened in England in 1628. All right. If you feel we went too fast, watch the video again. Make sure you have all your notes completed for this part of your flipped classroom packet.